towards a general election on the 14th of October. Time to take stock of where we're going as a country. What advice would you give Christians as they think about how they might cast their vote on that day?
Well, one thought I've had is, because sometimes people say the elections are won in our wallets, you know, what's going to make a difference to my wallet?
Yeah, absolutely.
But actually as Christians, what have we thought about casting our vote for the good of our neighbour?
Right. How would you define neighbour?
Well,
it was a lawyer asked Jesus that at one time.
He did, and the parable of the Good Samaritan highlights, you know, one particular kind of neighbour we could think of. We are in I think a challenging situation about relationships, Pākehā, Māori, questions of co-governance and so forth.
Sure.
Some of us, you know, get quite agitated about these, but if we look at that kind of issue through the lens of what does it mean to love our neighbour, we've got to ask the question, what does it mean to raise Māori up? Because in all sorts of ways, statistically, we know this, Māori suffer by comparison to Pākehā, and that is, broadly speaking, a result of the colonisation process. So co-governance, yes, is about power sharing, and we will have thoughts about that, but it is also about honouring, speaking as a Pākehā, honouring my neighbour who is Māori. But there are other neighbours at stake in this election.
Okay, what are some other neighbours that you can think of?
The younger generation who feel shut out of buying houses, for example.
Yep.
The poor who are feeling the cost of living crisis.
What about those perhaps are suffering from ill health and can't access medical care?
We've got a huge challenge with our medical system at the moment, and it's a massive challenge which I don't think is only about funding. Funding's always a challenge, isn't it, for any system, but we seem to be a bit short of doctors and nurses.
Absolutely.
We've got emergency surgery saying we can't be open all night, and hospitals not able to get onto operating lists and so forth. So a big challenge for whoever might be the government after the 14th of October. But our love of neighbour must be a love for those who are vulnerable, who have maybe more needs for the health system than we ourselves might presently have a need for.
Okay. And what about the, well, my youngest son is in the process of shifting overseas in about 3 weeks' time to Australia, where there are more opportunities, better salaries and things. That's an issue that concerns a lot of us. What would you say to that kind of issue as we think about the election?
I think it's a really important issue, because if we get too focused on just, for example, will this party give me a tax cut, or shouldn't be giving me a tax cut because of, it's actually, isn't it also the overall economic picture for the whole country?
Absolutely.
Which means that it's not only younger people who can look to Australia and say things look better over there. So I think we've got to cast our vote not only on maybe particular issues, but on the general issue. Who do we think will, so to speak, run the country best in the next 3 years?
The other factor that strikes me is environmental issues. I was talking to a younger person just last night, and that was the overriding kind of factor for her in terms of casting her vote.
Absolutely. Our neighbour in that sense is everyone around us, including ourselves. What is the future looking like in terms of climate change, rising sea levels, changing climate? We've seen a lot of very hot weather in the Northern Hemisphere, fires and so forth. We've had our own floods and storms in New Zealand this year. Again, really important vote to cast in favour of a party that is committed to engaging with the challenge of climate change. Now, this is tricky, isn't it? Because we've just named, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 issues, and every party is a little bit different on each of those issues. And it's jolly difficult, isn't it, to say, well, is it party X, Y, or Z that over those half a dozen key issues, it is going to be a great party to lead us forward?
Yeah, so I know you're not going to advise us how to vote, but what I'm hearing you saying is that using that sort of framework of neighbour, who is our neighbour? Who are those who are suffering? Who are those who are not accessing things that we take for granted? What about the next generation? They're our neighbour, and they will suffer the consequences of climate change. So I love that kind of framework of who is our neighbour, and let's think about our neighbour as we think about how we cast our vote.
So there is one thing I'm really hot on when it comes to elections. Yes, I won't advise you which party to vote for, but I'm really hot on you should vote.
Okay.
And that can be tempting to feel, look, a plague on all the parties. I'm not going to bother.
No.
But really, democracy is a very precious thing. We're
Absolutely.
seeing it trampled on by countries like Russia and China and so forth.
Yes.
We uphold democracy when we make the effort
Absolutely.
to vote. So make the choice, go out or by post. I forget the systems these days, but please, as Bishop, I say to all who are watching this video, please vote.
Yeah, that's a great message to close with. Well, here's a slightly better one to close with. I know the parish of Kashmir are having a debate of party candidates in a few weeks' time. And I think that parish has done a great job in saying to people, come along, be informed, and cast your vote sensibly and wisely.
I certainly advise you, if you can get to a candidates meeting in Kashmir, there'll be other places, other churches hosting them across the diocese. Make an effort, go out.
Definitely, to be informed, absolutely. Thank you for your time once more.